billion in total revenue in its lifetime. Going forward, it is important that the flow of information to the public is very clear and understandable. The commission currently provides oversight to roughly 50 Measure J projects, many of which have been in process for well over 1 year. That's the reality. I propose that you add a project initiation date as well as estimated completion dates to each project. This level of transparency will enable the public to better understand the nearly 20 million in future spend that will occur related to projects from previous fiscal years, i.e. ones that you all have mostly inherited. Regarding the 23, 24, and 24, 25 adopted budgets, I was disappointed to see line items in each budget year for 1.75 million in project overrun costs. While cost overruns are understandable, these amounts should be assigned to the individual projects where the overruns are occurring. This will enable greater transparency at the individual project level. Large unassigned amounts like these are a bad idea. If not already done so, please inquire about the 445,703 interest income loss in fiscal year 21-22. Odd events like this must be made very transparent. Also requiring full transparency is the expected payback amortization schedule of the recently approved funds related to the Plaza Theater. How many months in arrears are acceptable before we want to see some sort of a return? And finally, consider forming a subcommittee to ensure that information shared with the public is presented in a clear and understandable manner to, say, a high school student. Why not engage some Palm Springs High School juniors and seniors who enjoy civics to provide their input in focus groups on Measure J going forward? By the time Measure J concludes, these students will be 30 years old. Why not engage them now? I know you're already always looking for ideas for projects. Maybe the young people, soon to be much more engaged, can provide some input. A small number of you need to step up and set a strong process standard in this area, budgets and expenditure reporting. This will aid us all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grams. Next public speaker is Paul Henriksen.
Well done.
Good evening, friends and neighbors of the Measure J commissioners. Paul Henriksen, city volunteer, Upper West Side, long-term leadership. I'm speaking to you not about finance, which is on the agenda, but a non-agenda item. Some of you may recall this. It has been nicknamed the Jim Gross Memorial Sidewalk. For those of you who don't know who Jim Gross is, he's a former chair of 1PS. He passed away during the pandemic. He was also long-term leadership for the El Rancho Vista neighborhood organization. And he championed for years a complicated 1,300-foot long gap of sidewalk in a critical location that's adjacent. And we promised that we would continue to trumpet the project and hopefully find a solution. This is it's along Vista Chino on the south side of the street, the north side of the airport. It's tribal land, it's airport land, it's the city's involved, but it's also along the state highway. So it makes it complicated. Former commissioner of the airport commission, Patricia Breslin, she brought it to the airport commission. They were in favor of it. The city's in favor of it, but there's complications about who's going to take responsibility for it. And as I understand, the tribe is also in favor of it. This is an especially dangerous place. And last week, I witnessed something that I've witnessed several times before that made me say, I need to come here to the Measure J Commission and ask that people take a look at this again. This sidewalk, there's no curb that basically, as many of you know, it's 50 miles an hour there. There's 2 lanes in both directions, and on the south side, there is no margin of asphalt. It is lanes, and then it's these large piles of dirt, rock, and gravel. It's very dangerous. And I saw, once again, there was this, the police were pulled up onto the mounds because a woman had fallen and she was badly hurt. Fortunately, she didn't fall into traffic, which could happen. And I've also seen people pushing baby carriages literally in the traffic lanes. I've seen people with canes and walkers, people on bikes. It's very difficult to traverse those large rocky gravelly mounds, that 1,300 feet. And there isn't sidewalk on the other side of the street. So it's very dangerous, and it always bothered Jim, and he worked so hard to get attention to it, and nothing ever happened, probably because it's complicated. So I'm here to ask you to please take a look at it again. And Joelle will probably be able to give some really valuable input on why it's complicated, but instead of us stopping and saying it's complicated because of the state and the city who's going to take responsibility, we need to do something about it. Oh, thank you. Before someone's killed. Thank you.
We have no more.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those public comments. Next, we have just general welcome comments from me. So just a couple of thoughts as it's our first in-person meeting. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to staff for kind of guiding us through this almost 3-year process of being virtual, onboarding new commissioners, and really kind of supporting this work. And we've still done a lot of work in the Measure J Commission from the start of the pandemic to, oh no, we actually do have plans to move forward with Measure J projects, and now kind of moving forward with like essentially new class, new cohort. So just a big thank you for all the changes. And I also want to, I don't know if she's watching, or maybe she doesn't need to watch, but Evelyn helped a lot too in the previous year. So if you could send my regards to her, that'd be great. Right there. And then to the new commissioners, I just kind of also want to acknowledge, it's not the first meeting of the season, but it kind of feels like it because we're here in person. But I just also wanted to encourage you all to kind of show up with your full selves and ask as many questions, both here as for each agenda item, but you know, whether when you're reviewing the agenda and sending it to staff or asking Vice Chair Robin and I beforehand or after, it is a learning process. And I just kind of want to acknowledge that it is, it's totally normal for it to kind of feel a little overwhelmed or to have a lot of questions. But those questions make these conversations really fruitful. So I just kind of want to acknowledge that, as it feels a little bit different now that we're not in our respective living rooms and home offices and whatnot. Those questions are still great. That being said, let's dive into today's agenda, to our new business. And I'm going to hand over to Chris, if you can kind of talk us through the budget, and then guessing Joel, the capital project update too.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody in person. We'll start with page 1. It's the summary page. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Before I start, I wanted to turn the microphone over to Public Works Director David McAbee. He wanted to introduce a couple of the staff members that are key to closing out some of these Measure J projects. David, you want to come up here to the mic?
Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Many of you may not remember me because I have been gone for many months with an illness, but I'm back. So good to see all of you. Just wanted to say that I'm back. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. And I have 2 new members that we've just brought on, an assistant director and a project manager, which is significant for some of the projects that we have. So I would like to, if I can, introduce them quickly, just have them introduce themselves for a second. And then, of course, we're available for any questions you have later. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Daniel Martinez, Assistant Director of Maintenance Facilities. I'd like to say hi to everybody, and I'm here available if you guys have any questions.
Nice to meet you.
Me too.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Aaron Ferguson. Just moved here actually in December, new project manager. Working with the team over in facilities. I come from the private sector, working in construction management for the last 13 years. Looking forward to working on these projects and nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
There we go.
All right, thank you very much for that. We're gonna start with the summary page on page one. Looking around, looks like everybody has it. We're gonna go to the third column over where it says year-to-date fiscal year 23-24, and that's where we're gonna start. The first number is your beginning fund balance of $9.7 million. Second line is the revenue, the 5.97. That's the Measure J sales tax revenue to date. I will say it is trending down to budget. It's but that's not uncommon for what we're seeing in the general fund as well. And as a matter of fact, working with our tax consultants, we're seeing the sales tax numbers throughout the valley be down. Us and Rancho Mirage seem to be taking the hardest hit. For us, one of the major reasons is our two biggest categories, which are restaurants and auto sales, have taken a big hit in the last 6 months. And so for that reason, we are down in sales tax. It was very surprising to see that. It looks like it started somewhere around the February, March timeframe in 23, and it's been trending downward ever since. So hopefully that we recover that, because that would be an impact to the budget if it continues on this downward trend. Right now, it's down 6%, which is around $400,000. So we hope we can reverse that as we get to our busy season in this next 6 months. Going down to the expenses on the street repairs, we've got 62,879. Joe will probably speak to this later, but we've got a contract coming for street repairs, and so that business and that expense is going to be picking up really soon. Community initiated projects at 315,000. I'll go over the detail of that later. And then we have an airport reserve of 200,000. The debt service of 783,425. Again, that's the debt service that we charge quarterly to the Measure J fund. That's for the downtown revitalization debt that we took on in 2012. And then we have the downtown maintenance, landscaping, and security, which is 339,896. And that, as you remember, it's for the maintenance of downtown, the security downtown, and some of the landscaping downtown. And just a reminder, as the commission knows, and you can see in the budget, the commission voted to phase that out over the next 2 years, so that in fiscal year 26 and 27, that amount would be zero and absorbed by the general fund. And then capital spend, $4.5 million in capital spend. That's mainly a lot of Joel's projects, and we'll look at where the detail is for that. And year to date, we have $6.2 million in expenses, and we are showing a minor deficit of $30,000. We can flip it over to the 2-pager. This is all the detail. So this is the detail behind the summary, and I'm going to flip back and forth. I tried to make a few changes to make this a little bit easier to read. We will continue to work on this to make it easier to read. It's just when you start adding columns, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And as Chair Soto has said before, there's a lot here. There's a lot here. And most of this is prepared manually. So it is sort of getting to be a big monster. But with that being said, I'm going to have you flip to page 2. And I want to show you where some of these numbers are in the summary page. So if you go to the first column in page 2, and you see that $29.38 million number, you flip back over to page 1, that is down the way in our second column. That's the continued appropriations, or what we'd like to call the carryover. So that's the 26.7 million added to the 2.6 for the community initiated projects. That total is 29 million. Just so you know where the numbers are on this first and second page. And then secondarily, if you go to the second page of the big legal spreadsheet, you go over to the fourth column, and you see that $6.24 million number. That is all of the active expense behind on the summary page. If you go down to the summary sheet, that's $6.24 million. So that's all the detail behind the $6.2 million total expenses. So again, just trying to make it more transparent. I think you guys know my history is to try to be as transparent as I possibly can. And, for that, we do provide all this detail. So going back to the legal sheet, we'll look at page 1 and we'll go over to the column, which is the fiscal year 23-24 expenditures actual. You can see what projects are in play right now, and where we're spending our money. So a lot of it has to do with the 3.39 million. That's the recreational LD lighting. And the status update on there is the completion is predicted to be April 24. So that should be completed soon. And then you've got some minor expenses, which I will not go through. But the next big major expense is the 573,000. That's for the Article Tract Sewer Phase 4. So those are really the two big major projects that are in play. And then we got some other projects that are minor in nature. We'll come back to this page and we'll get some questions and comments on some of the projects that the commission has comments, and then Joel will be here, or David will be here to answer any of those questions. So let's go to the last page, the third page, which is our community initiated project page. And if you go over to the gray highlighted column, that $315,961 is the activity to date. You can see it's made up of the drainage at the Boys and Girls Club of $180,000. Some minor expenses for the sage structures at the animal shelter, the Demuth Dog Park upgrades, and then the swim center is progressing along as well. So we've got some good major activity going on with our community initiated projects. Drainage at the Boys and Girls Club is completed. And if anybody has any other questions, when we get to that point for Joel on some of those projects, we'd be more than happy to take them. So that concludes the budget update. We'll be more than happy to take any questions from the commissioners if they have any.
Question, I was curious about the revenues that's trending downward. Is that downward compared to like the pandemic years, or is it also compared to pre-pandemic?
It's down compared to last year, and it's down compared to budget. So in the budget, we predicted, I think, a small growth of somewhere around 2 or 3%. We didn't get too aggressive. It's usually one of those things that's hard to predict. But we didn't see any reason at the time of the budget to take these down, and we didn't see it trending down. So we went ahead and tried to, forecast it out at 2-3%, just like we always do. And we're really surprised that they really didn't start trending way down until the September, October, November timeframe, when we hit a 10% decline compared to last year. So we're hoping that trend doesn't continue. If it does, it would be impactful to the budget.
I have a question for you, Chris. Have you spoken with any of the representatives of the car dealerships or the restaurant business?
No, I haven't. We actually just found out the reason why it was trending down a few days ago when our tax consultants were able to issue their reporting for that time period. So we haven't, and we're gonna have a meeting with them coming up, so I might have some more information for you, next meeting. Our tax consultants are usually pretty good about diving into some of that detail and trying to understand it. But just so the commission knows, it is a valley-wide issue. A lot of the other cities the only city in the valley that showed positive growth was Coachella. And they had just 1.6%. Every other Rancho Mirage was down 12%. And then everybody else was somewhere in the 5 to 8% range, but it's a significant decline.
Thanks, Joel. Any questions? Yes,
Yeah, I
Mr.
think,
Hawkins.
comment and a question. So the comment is regarding the street paving. I think it's exciting that we're on the precipice of doing the contract award. It sounds like the notes say it will be done in February, which is great. Joel, do you have a sense of when the work will actually occur?
Yeah, so if we award it in February, if everything lines up and we go to the second meeting in February, it takes about a month to iron out all the contracts. So we're looking at March, April, starting somewhere around there. And it takes a good, 4 or 5 months to get it all completed. So we're gonna be doing a lot of work. As soon as we start that project, we anticipate doing the $9 million worth of paving.
Cool, thank you.
Vice Chair Nelson.
Question for Joel, if you have this information, so we just rolled over to mid-year for 23-24. Do you have a sense or a reforecast yet of what your expected spend is for this fiscal year?
You know, I don't dive into the numbers to figure out those percentages, I mean, unless asked to. I don't necessarily track it, so I don't have an idea of what that is gonna look like.
Could you, for the next meeting, could you do a high level check at that to see which of the projects that haven't picked up steam yet are actually gonna start drawing down the funds that we have for this year?
Yeah, I could, and one good indicator is the status. If you look at the status and the projects in design, you're not gonna get a lot of expenditure, right? So like the main library, we're about to, engage with the architect to, the full scope was approved by council, so it's exciting, right? It's a big project. We're gonna go out to bond. So the projected spend on that is gonna be different now because we're gonna bond for it and maybe issue a $2 to $3 million contract to the architect. So we're still ironing out those details. And when essentially the paving project kicks on, that's about $9 million we're gonna spend in 6 months. So those are, we can project those out. The other ones, design is so finicky, it takes long. So there could be small spends or big spends depending on what phase we're in. The roundabout right now, we're still in the right of way phase. So those little phases take a long time. So it'd be trickling in the expenses until we get into full design and then the budget increases. So I can take a stab at what we're gonna be. But it's gonna be just a stab,
Yeah,
maybe an estimate.
Appreciate that, and my question is sort of has two aspects to it. One is just to get a high level sense of will there actually be momentum to draw funds? And that gets to maybe the more important point of, have we hit a stall point on a project where we might be talking about this stall in a year or so? In other words, we've lived with a lot of lack of momentum.
Yeah.
Is that grammatically correct? A lot of lack of momentum. We've had hand wringing for a few years over projects that just can't get going. And I'm wondering which on this list are at risk of being stalled projects, even though we have the addition of 2 skilled people to help that get to escape velocity.
Yeah, I'm understanding where you're coming from, and we could look at that. And from where I stand and how I see my projects, they're not stalled for me. They're in different phases of the process. We could be very in preliminary engineering, right? So all these have different phases, have different project managers assigned to it, different engineers. Each one of them has different projects assigned to them. So they're in different phases. I don't see them as stalled. I see them as natural progression in each one of those capital projects. And as everyone knows, our capital projects do take a long time, but I can add more information to the status and do a projection of expenditures, right? I think I can show that within 6 months, we're gonna spend $9 million in paving, and that's a true construction project. When we get to actually constructing the roundabout, that's gonna be a big expense. I'll be able to tell you, but that's a year or 2 away depending. So I can do a better job of updating the status and projecting costs for the next year.
Thank you.
And maybe this might be just something that we have kind of in these handy binders, thank you, Melissa. That isn't something that is, it's kind of like a one-time thing to develop, but like, what are those phases, right? There's, on hold, bidding, under design, in process, and so that way it might help us understand like this design might be a bit, and then versus if something is in process, that might kind of trigger us to understand, where, it's an active project and there might be some more questions on it. So that might just be like a handy resource to have in here somewhere. Just something to keep in mind. I have a couple questions, but I'll let Commissioner Frederick go
Thank
first.
you, Joelle. In light of the discussion about the library this week, the Fry building or Frey building, I'm not sure how we're supposed to say that. I thought it was Frey building, but anyway. That's already funded through Major J, am I correct?
That is part of the project, yeah. So the design aspect of that project is funded through Measure J. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
But when we get to construction, it's one project, it's associated with the library project, and it'll be built with the library, so it's gonna be bonded for construction.
Is there a time frame for that building to start?
It's gonna be in conjunction with the library, so
It
it's
will.
one project, yes. We're not gonna do the freight building before the library, just for the
Oh.
simple fact that we have one architect designing both structures. There's gonna be bid packages, the bid packages are all gonna be put together in one, bid
Mhm.
package that goes out to the contractors and because we're lumping them together, we might get benefit, in putting it as a single project instead of two projects.
So that will be on hold for a while.
I don't consider it on hold. I
Well,
consider it in
we're gonna
its
wait till
initial phase until it's one project. It's a library project and it includes the Fray or Fry building.
And then we need. We'll get that cleared up. Thank you, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Chris. First, around the transfer out to other funds, the Plaza Theater, that's a fresh decision we made. The police department radios? Was that something that the council decided kind of? I don't remember. Who did that? Yeah, sorry, I could just be misremembering, and that was something we did last year, but I thought we had, I don't remember that.
Is there I don't see the project.
The transfer out to other funds on the,
On the summary sheet.
on the summary
Oh,
sheet.
got it.
So around where like the second ring is transfer out to other funds, PD radios and Plaza Theater.
Oh, that was, oh, yeah, that was done last year. Yeah, so, that was an approved transfer by the commission in the budget, and that's something that we did last year. I believe that those radios have been purchased, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll come back with an update.
Okay, I just wanted to. And then the other, just for like transparency's sake,
Mhm.
the debt service for the downtown project, can you just give us a time frame as to what the length of that debt service is roughly? How much
Yeah,
time we
it's-
have left on it?
Yeah, I will be rough, and I can correct myself if this is way off, but it's somewhere in the mid 2030s. A lot of our debt is gonna come off the books, and this is one of those issuances that are gonna come off somewhere around 2032, 2035. If we did the debt issuance in 2012, we usually do it for 25 to 30 years. I believe this was a 30-year, and so you're looking at the early 2030s.
That's really helpful. Any other questions for Chris or Joel on some of these projects? Commissioner Davis.
Chris, I think this is more of a question for you. So if we end up 6% or so down in terms of tax revenue, how does that impact what we have budgeted for various projects?
I don't think it's gonna, I think what'll happen is we might have to dip into the fund balance a little bit to support the projects, which. Luckily, we still have a pretty healthy fund balance. And it wouldn't be inappropriate to do that with the healthy fund balance that we do have. So if this downward trend continues and we see a 6% decline. You can see you can see on the budget and the summary page, that first line for 23-24, we're already budgeting a deficit of 2.8 million. And so that deficit will probably just increase and we'll dip a little further into our fund balance.
I have a.
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, with the maintenance downtown,
Mhm.
that our concern was the security. Right.
Right.
And I thought there was an out date for that contract.
There is, and I
Okay.
don't remember what it is at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's up before Measure J phases it out.
That long?
Yeah.
I thought it was
Mhm.
shorter than that.
It could be. Let me ask that question. I'll bring you back a
That's
firm
fine.
answer next.
Thank you, thank you.
I have some questions around the community initiated projects. There's still quite a few projects that are in process or we've spent very little in the community initiated projects, and these are projects that were approved, over a year ago. So I was wondering if we could, whether that's David or even, if you have any insight in some of these Parks and Rec projects that are in process according to their status. Are these things where you should anticipate before the end of the fiscal year at this point?
No, I don't.
So I do know that these are freshly, the status is freshly updated, so Joel and David and Yvonne all went through these projects and updated them to our current status. But I couldn't tell you what in process means for that one particular project.
But we can give you a quick overview if you'd like.
That would be wonderful.
Myself or Aaron, either one would be happy to do that if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
Thank you, absolutely. Thank you for asking.
I can speak to, let's see, I have two on here that I'm working on, the shade structure over the playground at Victoria Park. That project will begin next week. The demolition of the existing playground equipment. And over the course of the next 4 to 5 weeks, that project will be complete. The Palm Canyon Theater maintenance repairs, I attended a walkthrough a couple weeks ago to discuss the maintenance concerns of that building, and we are deep into scope development on that one. David and I will be meeting in the next couple of weeks to get to the next stage of scope and begin pricing the project. And I believe that those are the only ones that I have an update on. David, do you want to speak to the other ones? Yeah.
Absolutely, you're serious. Thank you guys for the time. Let's see. So the item 5, for the add new pieces of equipment at Desert Highland. So that right now is being reviewed with Parks and Rec Commission, so they have the items, but right now we're giving them options to choose from. So once we know that, then they'll sort of move forward. Oh, thank you. Thank you. The hiking trail maintenance and trailhead signage, that's really in the planning process because the initial request was extremely vague. So we're working on getting that sort of narrowed down so we understand really what the intent of the request was. So that's why that is really in the planning phase. It's not really in the scope development yet, because I need to have a better understanding what the thought process was from the initiator. Let's see, what else? This is not completed. Palm Canyon Theater we spoke to. I think that covers, but if I missed one, please let me know and I will circle back.
Yeah, thank you, I really
Absolutely.
appreciate those updates. Fabulous to hear about Victoria Park, playground and shade happening real soon. And the reason I kind of bring this up is that I completely understand and expect for the cost to be different from what the original requests have come in. In general, the community might appreciate or expect those increased costs to be clarified a bit earlier, right? And so, the fact that the hiking trail, we're not sure exactly how much it's going to cost, or even the Palm Canyon Theater, it'd be great to know those, not that the project's complete, but even the exact estimated costs are gonna be before we even consider the next round of community initiated projects, right? So to just have clarity on how much some of these projects that were approved are gonna cost, and so that way, it doesn't impact other things. So that's great to know that we'll have some updated numbers on those, because these numbers are growing like crazy.
Certainly, and we'll work to that. Some of that is just vetting the projects initially. That can be a challenge, but I certainly understand where you're coming from and we can work on that.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm not sure which of you guys can answer it. I was at the youth dog park this morning. I saw the new shade structure. But it says that we're addressing immediate needs. Less than a third of the amount allocated has been spent. What's the rest of the 260,000 plus supposed to be going toward?
So right off the top of my head, I don't remember all the different requests that were made as part of that. The one major one was the actual shade structure. And it was to do DG and to do other things within the park. And right now I don't recall the exact scope of it. So again, it kind of goes back to whatever the estimate was, may not be in this instance, maybe we spend a lot less than what the estimate projected on the request was.
So that $260,000 plus could be used for other projects?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thank
so the flip side of that is sort of the swim center project, right? The swim center is being, having community input and, that particular project, I'm sure it's gonna come back to the commission with some requests for funding. Because it is growing in nature, right? And that's what's happening in some of these projects, right? They were sort of scoped out, we combined them. We made one big project where there were little ones put together, and then once we put it together, we start designing it. Community has input, they have more requests, more adds, if you will, scope starts increasing, so the cost obviously increases as well. So, yeah, we will be back.
Any other questions?
Comment, I have a lot to say tonight. There's a lot of things that Major J has accomplished here. A whole bunch of stuff, and they're done. Why do we keep seeing the same page each time? The ones that are done, can you take it off? I mean, it's a long list and we see it every month.
Yeah, we're in the process, Joel and I met last Tuesday, we're gonna try to do some cleanup on some of the projects list, so that could be one thing that we do. If the project is truly completed, if there's leftover budget dollars, we'll just close out that project and it'll go down to add to the fund balance, so we're in the process of doing that right now, and I don't think we can be able to complete it by the February meeting, it's gonna come up on us pretty quick. But I'm hopeful by March that we can do some good cleanup on these and have some of that done.
Yeah, it looks daunting every month, and then I look, oh, that's done, and that's done. And for me personally, I like not to see that again.
Sure.
I'm proud of what Major J's done on those projects. Thanks, Chris.
The flip side to that is great to clean up schedules of projects that are active, and that includes inactive and completed. The reminder for all of us, taking the lead from you all of how do we tee up the victory lap to tell the community that things have been completed. And we're always, we often have this good moment to remember, yes, we have to get with Amy Blaisdell, we have to do some promotion, we need to spread the word because good things have been completed. The opportunity, I think, comes from, as you do the cleanup on schedules, to see where these now shift from active to done. That can then come back in some form or another to the table to then get the community messaging out, which is not your responsibility, but you can take the lead on telling us when something good has happened.
And can I just add to that? It almost seems that like the commission might have some more work to do on these completed projects, but it's kind of completed, at least on the engineering side. And so that kind of gives us a little bit of like task and homework for that promotion piece.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Navy.
Yeah, it's just it's a question or a comment, but it came up, the hiking trail, signage and upgrades. That it sounded like the department's trying to determine what the scope was or what the person's intent was at the very beginning. And so that brought up in my mind the question, and I understand there is a committee to tighten up the public project request. So I was wondering if there is a timeline when that committee would be reporting back, or if there is a progress report on that. I know it's not on the agenda, so.
Commissioner Feder, I don't know if you want to chat a little bit about the community initiative projects. I think we did that last month, but if you want to clarify.
What the subcommittee's doing? Well, because we're not going to meet until we're early February, right? We're making progress. Chairwoman, on the application and also responsibility, a little bit more direction to council, how much we personally should talk about a project or bring people in to be clear. We're learning a lot of things that we need to add more to. And vetting and having the project person, if we're not really clear, we need to hear from them. What is it you're expecting? And what is it you really want? And in the application, and again, none of this has been presented to the commission. We have another meeting, I think, to clean up the paperwork, but, because these people here are totally overloaded, we are asking people who submit projects to be more vetting of their project. Is it a city street or does it belong to the tribe? You can find that information out. And the estimates that we get are always way off. We're never surprised when Joel asks for more money or we need 3 million more. You know, that's do a home repair, you have the same problem. So it is possible for small asks, but they can do a little more asking in the community. If you want concrete, call the concrete guys. There are ways you can find and be clearer about what you're asking, because I don't think we're surprised, but when the public sees it goes from this to this, that creates problems for us. So we're going to get there, I hope, through March. We can present some ideas to this commission. But we have other things to get through before we, I think, ask for more. That would be my feeling about that. We need to clean up more things here before we bring more into the pipeline. Is that what you want? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Good, now you know.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you so much, staff, for all those, updates. We have a tight, pretty short, agenda today. That brings us to general commission member comments and requests. I think Commissioner Newby, that was a great segue to our next agenda item. Any other comments or requests for us to think about, or other things we want to think about for our next meeting as well? Yes.
I just have a quick question. Following up on the comment from the member of the public earlier this meeting. How did we arrive at the $1 million cost overrun projections? Are they just guesses or?
Yeah, that was just a budgeted item by the commission. Yeah, we just kind of took a stab and thought, well, let's just set aside $1 million for that and hopefully it'll be enough. And I think at the time, if I remember correctly, we decided that if that wasn't enough, we would come back to, with the $1 million, we don't have to come back to the commission to ask them for that money. That's available for us to use and dip in when we know we have cost overruns. If we exceed that amount, now we've got to come back to the commission and get the approval by the commission to exceed that amount. But it was just sort of a stab. We've never really done that before. It's kind of a new item.
And so that, following up, that the $1 million, which is budgeted for this fiscal year, is available to help cover the 4 or 6% reduction in tax revenues.
Well, it can be theoretically. It's really just, really are gonna use that project by project. So if we see a project that's over the cost, then we can use that. Boys and Girls Club is a good example. And I'm trying to figure out a way to report this to where I don't extend columns and everything, but the Boys and Girls Club right now is over $100,000 of their estimated cost. So really, we're down to 900,000 of that being used. So that's an example of how that gets used. If there's any other costs or any projects that come about that run over, and we know there are, that's why we put that in there, then we want to be able to have that money available. So we're not constantly coming back to the commission and saying, can we get some more money and this is what we need. So we'll use up that $1 million on a project by project basis. And then if we need more than that, we'll come back to the commission.
And maybe for transparency, we can report and at every meeting if we did use the money from that and what project it went to, right? So, I mean, I know there's a concern about transparency and that there's danger in just having money there that we could just use willy-nilly, but that's not really the case, right? We want to use it for projects that the commission has already approved. We just sometimes our projects are, I need to approve an amendment today so that the contractor keeps on going. You know, if I wait for the next month to come in and get permission to get the money, then get it transferred, right? I've lost 2-3 weeks on a project that's active. If I can move something that's a change order sooner and then report back to council, which is typically what I do with the council as well, right? If I need more money and it exceeds my allowance, I will go back and report to council. And if I do use the money, I still report that to council in a balance and change order at the end of the project. So we're always transparent, we're always clear. Every project, if we take it to council, it's shown how much money we spent, how much money we went over, and where we got the money from. So.
And I believe there was a project, right, where it was like you needed like 15,000 or something.
Yes, that's kind of what prompted this. There were
Exactly.
very small amounts of money that I was stuck, that I did, you know, I had to come back and wait a while before the project kept on going. So I don't spend money that I don't have authorization to spend.
Appreciate that. Yes, Mr. Robin.
It's a tag-along question to that. So the good news with shade structures might be at Duluth that there's, what's it, $250,000, sizable amount of money in cost savings, project cost savings, maybe. And if it turns out to be, does that line item of savings stay put and sticks there, or does it somehow wash against a drawdown of the contingency?
Where does it go back to?
Does it stand on its own as a savings for the fiscal year?
Yeah.
And is independent of any activity in the contingency?
Yeah, so we could do one of two things. If, let's say there is a $200,000 cost savings there. If there's other Duluth Dog Park needs that request has, and we'll go back and look at it, then we could use it for that. If there's another Duluth Park project, we could come back to the commission and say we want to transfer money there, or we can just close out the project, and that 200,000 would go down to fund balance and increase the fund balance.
I wanted to follow up on the other public comment from the community. Joelle, are you able to address that situation with Genotri, or is that something that would have to come back at another meeting?
In general, I remember the area. I've been very clear when Bob was speaking that it is tribal land. It's very difficult for us to, as a city, to initiate a project. It has been around for a while. I need to do a little bit more research because I know I have researched this and I've already commented on and given my opinion on what we can do there. And I drive that stretch of road every day, so I know exactly where it's at. And if I would have been able to do it, I would have already done it. But let me do a little bit, go back into my files, find out exactly where we stood there. Maybe something's changed now and we can move a project forward, but you know, it'll be a capital project that gets initiated. And then we ask for money and we put it in the budget, right? So it would progress in the next year or so.
And could you also maybe, when you give that update, also share in the context of, forget what it's called, but like the safe routes to school, sidewalk assessment, improvement, kind of that general scope of work, because that's a big stretch of, that's a big gap for sure. But I know that just recently we did that kind of full city assessment on sidewalks, and so it might be helpful to just also see where that fits with some of that other work that's already been identified.
Yeah, for sure. It's I think it's even listed here, the pedestrian streets master plan is what you're referring to, and that has sidewalk gaps in it as well, identified as projects, right? And we're tackling those projects. There are some big ones there and some small ones, so we're looking at it. And that one, kind of going back to Commissioner Robbins' question about, you know, where are we, if we're stalled, this one in particular has so many projects, it's difficult to really give that data other than we have these projects, we've identified them, we're gonna create capital projects for them, and we're gonna move them forward in the process.
So maybe we can just have an update on project number 2221 overall, and then we can kind of maybe highlight the Vista Chino gap as well in that. Great.
Joelle, how much responsibility does the tribe have here? In a sidewalk, it's their land?
Well, I won't say for certain that it's, you know, the tribe controls it. It could be an allotee, someone that's not associated. It could be, there's multiple different facets of tribal property or a lot, it could be a lot leased. Also the complication that was mentioned earlier is that Caltrans is involved in that area as well, so the city can't typically initiate a project if it's Caltrans right away. So that makes it very difficult for me as a city engineer to tell Caltrans, I need you to put a sidewalk there, right? It doesn't happen, very fast, and we could probably communicate with them, but whether they're willing to do it or not is a different story. Right, so there's multiple layers to that particular segment. And some of the sidewalk gaps that you see around the city are because they are complicated, not because we don't want to take action.
If someone gets hurt there, who's liable?
There's different layers to that
Yeah,
as well.
that's even more complicated.
Yes. Yeah, I'm constantly addressing, from attorneys, is this city property? And if it is, I say yes. If it isn't, then I say, it's not.
No.
And then I have to attest to that. So I'm always right. I'm always, attorneys are always asking me those questions.
A couple of the projects, and this isn't necessarily like a February ask, but just this spring. Just some of the other projects that have other kind of project owners. If we can just get an update on project 1916, which is, the police project.
I can give you a short update on that if you need one. So it is, they are going to issue an RFP for that very soon. So that's gonna go through, it's gonna go through a couple of different RFPs. They're gonna have the first RFP to a consultant to tell them what they need. And then an RFP will become after that to actually design and tell the police department and the fire department what kind of equipment would be best and things like that. So it's kind of a couple pronged approach. It's probably, a year or so away from being completed.
Yeah, and I guess also, I mean, these are for the commissioners, the first number is kind of the year in which the project was first identified. And so there's just probably a lot of commissioners who could benefit from just like context of some of these things too. So that's why it's not necessarily a February ask, but just like reminder, this is kind of what the scope was and this is where we are. Another one that would be helpful is the 1923, the keyless entry, which I think that was identified as an IT owner. And then the 2226, just because again, it's kind of interdepartmental dependencies, just kind of highlighting those, the San Rafael turf conversion, so maybe Public Works and sustainability can give an update, but again, we don't have to do these all like in one month, but just if we could expand those out.
Yeah, in the past, I would give, thorough reports on each individual project, right? And as time progressed, and I've been doing this for about almost 5.5 years, it's the same status update on each one of those projects. So as we evolved, as Chris took over, we try to put together a quick review of where we're at, right? But what I'm hearing is that maybe we should step back and come back and do that again, go through every project again and kind of give status, where it started from, what it's about, when it was initiated. So, I was trying to balance the time we spent updating projects. If we do it once, that's great. I can do it, right? We'll get together with Public Works, we'll give you the information, but then the next meeting, we try to do that again, it's basically gonna be very little
Right.
progress, and we're not gonna change from that. So I think this was our attempt to try to give you quick updates, status, but maybe we should step back and give a full explanation of each one of these projects. And then you'll be able to tie what we said, or the bigger scope of things to the status, and maybe it makes it easier going forward.
And I'm open to the commission. I don't know if we need to do all of them in one meeting, or if it's, because they're not gonna be changing, right? There's not gonna be a drastic status update come April, right? It's not like we have to know every detail about every single of these projects right away. So that's kind of why I was thinking if we could also stand out across.
Maybe we pick 1 month engineering does an update of their projects, 1 month Public Works, and 1 month Parks, right? And then from there, the statuses will be highlighted there.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great example. Yes.
But just kind of piggybacking off that, I mean, it seems like the questions that many commissioners ask are like, when will it be done? When do you think it will be done? So that seems like that's a critical piece, that it's in a couple of these, but not to add a column, but to add, there's one thing to say, what's the status? It's in scope development, it's in process, we're bidding. It's another to say like, here's a year we think
And
that
one of
will
the
be
hardest
done.
things to do
A
is
guesstimate.
project when projects are complete, because that projection, wherever that is gonna change almost 100% of the times. So I've always
Could
had a way, but.
change. And that seems like my view would be, I'd rather see that updated as you go along, but at least there's always a, is this done in 24? Is it a 26 project?
Maybe-
Something that
maybe
just gives a
quarterly
little,
Projection of when it might be completed for construction, right?
but that may answer a lot of questions, and it's really separating out kind of what's the current status because it's hasn't started or it's in process versus when do we project it will be done.
And just, I know the commission knows this, right? These projects are in the scope of the whole city's 5-year CIP. So you're not seeing all the projects here, right? So, and that's okay, I can address the ones that are here, but I do have other funds that I draw from to build other projects like that. Bridges that we're building, the navigation center, other things that I'm doing.
Maybe we could have the 5-year CIP in like the miscellaneous tab, if that's okay. In case anybody wants to review that, that's already made. It's already great work, so just have access to it, or a reminder that we have access to it. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, I think we have some ideas of what conversations we're having in the next few months. That being said, our next regular Measure J Commission Oversight meeting is on Thursday, February 15th, 5:30. And a reminder, in case anybody's watching online, you can give your public comments in person. You can also give public comments virtually, right, Melissa? Yeah. You just kind of have to let her know, and if you want to watch virtually, also just reach out to Melissa so she can send the Zoom details to you. That being said, we're finishing a little early, 6:30. Can't promise this will happen at every meeting, but I'll take it when I can.
So I'd
yes.
like to compliment you. She did a great job at 1PS to represent Major J. It was really, I was proud to see you, and you spoke well and people listened to what you said. And the other thing is I did tour the Mizell kitchen. Holy moly, and the flags are still flying over there. Major J is in every corner of that building. That whole kitchen is electronic. It's all, the ovens work, and I just went insane in here. It was beautifully. So we should be very, very proud of that project. So 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at 6:30, we'll close this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Unless you want us to read this material, right? No, we should take it on.